The lower chamber of the Mexican Congress approved the constitutional reforms in regards to national sovereignty sent by President Claudia Sheinbaum. The Kremlin commented on Washington's proposal and a possible truce with Kyiv. And the pact reached between the US and Israel over Gaza could collapse as Tel Aviv opposes direct communications between the White House and the Palestinian resistance. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The lower chamber of the Mexican Congress approved on Tuesday the constitutional reforms in regards to national sovereignty sent by President Claudia Sheinbaum. The resolution, which was approved in particular with 327 votes in favor and 116 against, sets the requirement of preventive jail time to the crime of terrorism, including arms trafficking. It also states that no foreign intervention will be allowed or tolerated under any circumstance. The legislators who defended the proposal ratified that it is not just another reform, but an unprecedented advance that makes it clear that the country will not accept interventions, meddling, or any other act from abroad that is harmful to its integrity. The bill was then sent to state parliaments. In the Cuban capital, Havana, experts from the International Statistics and Information Office presented the Cuba Observatory on Gender Equality to ambassadors and representatives of the European Union in the Caribbean island. At the gathering, which took place on Tuesday at the National Hotel, the office's experts Anais Montequin, together with a team of local observers on gender equality, presented the structure and details of function of the initiative. Montequin explained that inputs from the platform, jointly developed with the Federation of Cuban Women and its Center for Women's Studies, have already been used for decision-making in various instances. The meeting sought to make the initiative known for potential users to benefit from its data in the formulation of public policies and scientific work.
In the National Women's Program, the indicators that we have here, the 33 indicators, serve as a basis for monitoring public policies where we are working. We have many challenges, and we think that every day, even with this type of events, with the exchanges we have, new contributions emerge and new paths towards which we can start to move.
The ambassador of the European Union in Cuba, Isabel Pedrosa, highlights the advances on the matter in Cuba.
It is an incomplete task. We can always be moving forward, and Cuba stands out for its progress in terms of the regulatory framework, creativity, women occupying outstanding positions in different areas. It is a task that is not finished, and it is always necessary to continue working, interpreting the figures, the names, to see where there is room for improvement.
More than 1,500 people have been reported missing in Chile. Because the authorities have not taken effective measures, families are considering a collective lawsuit against the state. More details with Paula Dragnik.
A neuralgic point in Santiago de Chile, the Palacio de la Moneda. Tourists stroll around and look curiously at the posters. They are the disappeared, about 1,600, but not those of the dictatorship, but those of democracy in strange circumstances, forgotten by those who should be looking for them, the justice system and the police.
The case was closed by the prosecutor in 2023, and there were many things to investigate. But no, the file was closed, and we were left with our arms crossed.
Law 21,500, enacted more than 2 years ago, is still not in force. The first 24 hours are key in the search for a missing person, but justice, especially for the poorest, does not seem to exist even with confessed criminals.
He confessed how he had murdered my brother and said that we were never going to find him again. And then he brags because the judges let him go free. That's our Chile.
We thought that this was going to change. However, today we see that there are hundreds of cases. Many of their cases are present here, when the law was already operative. However, the institutions that in theory should be in charge of the investigations do not apply the law.
Llegaron desde distintos puntos del país para exponer sus casos.
They came from different parts of the country to present their cases, many of them forgotten in court, while they endure the pain of uncertainty and invest their few resources in searching for their loved ones, like Fermin, an elderly man who arrived from Peru in a wheelchair and disappeared there at the airport.
Until today, I have no answer. I'm going to continue as far as God wants me to go. Hopefully this will help other people.
Marcharon hasta la Fiscalía Nacional.
People marched to the National Prosecutor's Office and the Presidential Palace to leave a new letter demanding compliance with the law on missing persons.
We want justice for all the disappeared. In the South, many things are happening. Many people are disappearing, and there are no answers for the relatives.
Chileans disappear under the ground. But we do manage to find vehicles, we do manage to find cars that get lost, but we don't manage to find people. That's why we go to the prosecutor's office, to ask them to find them. Thank you very much for being here.
The letters give hope to the families, who are increasingly organized to demand that the state comply with the law.
Yes, gentlemen, I am even willing to file a lawsuit against the state for non-compliance with the law, for Julia, and for all of us. Let's go ahead and not give up.
There is also the family of Julia Chunil, the Mapuche leader who disappeared 4 months ago after being threatened by landowners who covet the forests she protected.
We support this whole movement because we do not want my mother to be one more disappeared person in Chile. So, we asked the prosecutors to open the investigative file on the investigation that is being carried out for my mother's case. We want them to listen to us, the pain we have in our hearts for our relatives, for my mother who is missing. Listen to us. Mr. President Gabriel Boric.
Will he listen? We'll have to see.
Carolina Sandoval y Paola Dragnik, TeleSUR, Chile.
On Tuesday, Brazilian President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva held a phone call with United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres concerning the organization of the Climate Change Conference COP30 that will take place in Pará in November. The leaders' meeting is set to assess the progress of the Brazilian United Nations Alliance for Climate Ambition. In addition to advancing the development of targets, the conference will discuss ways to strengthen multilateralism to respond collectively to the challenge of climate change. In this regard, Guterres noted that more than 30 countries have been contacted and all are working to present their new climate change targets soon. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The delegation of the Colombian government in the dialogues with the guerrilla of the National Liberation Army, ELN, proposed a national congress in view of the crisis. From Bogotá, our colleague Hernán Tovar with a report.
The
Colombian government at the dialogue table with the ELN insurgency proposes a national peace congress, convening different sectors, human rights and social organizations, and the international community, with the objective of jointly debating the guidelines for negotiation with the armed groups as a collective effort.
This is a space in which we want to participate in broad sectors of civil society, organizations, networks, platforms, social movements, institutions, political,
movimientos sociales, instituciones, sectores políticos, económicos,
economic and social sectors that are very concerned about peace in the country due to the crisis and the implementation of the 2016 peace agreement. The critical situation that the dialogue tables are experiencing, the situation in many territories where the clashes of armed groups are causing serious damage to the civilian population.
It should be recalled that the peace talks with the ELN are broken after an incursion of this group in the Catatumbo region and confrontations with the dissidents of the former FARC that left several dead and displaced people, a scenario of violence that is being experienced in different regions of the country, including the paramilitary presence, for territorial control and income from illegal economies. In this context, the initiative was welcomed by some peasant organizations.
Efforts must be resumed for the implementation of the final peace agreement signed in 2016, and that guarantees are really generated for the reincorporation of the signatories with guarantees of security of life and permanence in the territories, and that this implementation can be given. Secondly, that the dialogues with the ELN can be resumed, and that there really is also a willingness of the counterpart to move forward precisely in the construction of peace for our country.
This cyclical conflict continues to claim the lives of social leaders and peace signatories, 48 of whom have been assassinated so far this year, in addition to the historic dispossession of land and inequality. For this reason, social organizations must insist on dialogue to overcome violence and social injustice, a demand they send to both the executive and the ELN.
It is a necessary and important initiative because there is no other choice, both for civil society and for a government inclined to peace. It is necessary to insist on negotiated dialogical ways and solutions to end the war and make a peace pact from a vision of complete peace, particularly with the ELN. However, what is really required is political will.
This initiative is scheduled to materialize on April 5th and will take place in the Colombian capital.
teleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
On Tuesday, Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa announced a strategic alliance with businessman Eric Prince, the owner of the U.S. mercenary agency Blackwater, to fight narcoterrorism. With the action, Noboa opens the door to the concession of the monopoly of the use of force exclusive to the state to a private company that is also foreign, even though Article 158 of the Constitution establishes that the agreement is an irregularity. The President will delegate the country's security to a company with a dark past, responsible for massacres and human rights violations that led it to face international lawsuits. The head of state also relegates his military and police forces to the background and will give privileged security and defense information to foreign mercenaries. In Greenland, polling stations closed on Tuesday in parliamentary elections marked by high turnouts. With around 40% of the votes counted, the centrist Nalidak Party, which advocates rapid independence from Denmark, is in the lead, while the Liberal Democratic Party is in the second place and the Social Democratic Summit the third. In this context, unofficial election results should be available within hours but will not be certified for several weeks as ballots from remote settlements arrive in the capital by boat, plane and helicopter. Voters are expected to elect 31 lawmakers who will shape the future of the island and at a turning point in the history between a choice for total independence and the U.S. president's intentions to control the island. On Wednesday, the Kremlin made a statement on Washington's proposal and a possible truce with Kyiv. The spokesman Dmitry Peskov assured that they are waiting for a report with details of the agreement as promised by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. As that time comes, Moscow is renewing the final statement of the meeting held in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday, in which President Volodymyr Zelensky agreed to a 30-day truce with Russia, although he did not rule out the possibility of a video conference to be organized relatively quickly if necessary. He preferred not to anticipate any events. The Kremlin will not consent to Ukrainian decisions that put at risk citizens who identify themselves with Russian culture on the territory of Ukraine. Ahead of a possible peace deal with the Kyiv regime, the Russian government ensured it would not accept resolutions that may affect or endanger the safety and life of citizens. The Kremlin further noted that Ukrainian measures should not have being focused on just the territory, as these laws issued by the Zelensky administration were seeking to deprive citizens of their historical Russian roots. Moreover, the Russian Foreign Ministry stressed the importance of the land and the efforts of villagers to preserve their cultural identity. We have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final show break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. The pact reached in Washington between President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over Gaza could collapse as Tel Aviv opposes direct communications between the White House and the Palestinian resistance. This Tuesday, the meeting in Qatar ended without agreement, while separate dialogues between Washington and Tel Aviv and Washington and Hamas are moving in different directions. Zionism questions the direct hostage negotiations between the White House and the resistance, while Washington leaves Tel Aviv out of key meetings. Adam Boyle, the White House envoy, affirms that Hamas is willing to reach new agreements, while the resistance reiterates that Israel continues to commit violations and war crimes against the Palestinian people. Yemeni forces have resumed the naval blockade against the Israeli occupier, effectively launching the operation after the expiration of the deadline given to the genocidal regime to reopen the border crossings. Precisely, the leader of the Ansarullah movement, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, gave the mediators a deadline to allow the entry of humanitarian aid and to restore electricity to the Gaza Strip. As the cut continues from Wednesday, the naval blockade against Israel will be enforced in the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, the Strait of Bab al-Mandab, and the Gulf of Aden, and will be maintained until the genocidal occupier meets the demands set in solidarity with the Palestinian people. Local authorities in the Gaza Strip warned of the intensification of the crisis as a result of the blockade imposed by the Israeli regime on the entry of humanitarian aid. The Union of Municipalities of Gaza says that after the order of the Israeli Minister of Energy and Infrastructure to cut the electricity supply to the Palestinian territory, the health system and the water supply were paralyzed due to the lack of energy in the desalination plant in Deir al-Balah. In this regard, the Palestinian government denounces that Israel is exposing the lives of more than 25,000 patients to the impossibility of receiving the treatment they require. A federal judge in New York on Monday blocked the deportation of Palestinian student Mahmoud Khalil. The recent Columbia College graduate was arrested by immigration officials over the weekend for his role in organizing the Gaza solidarity protest in 2024. President Donald Trump celebrated the arrest, saying he was proud that it was made possible by his executive order. However, the order was overturned by a federal judge as the student has legal status. The arrest has caused widespread outrage and several demonstrations of support have taken place. Human rights organizations in Sudan reported Wednesday bombings have claimed 2 civilian lives and 5 others injured in the country. These organizations announced military planes had launched attacks on 2 markets and a mine in an attempt to evict presidential areas. They further described these aggressions as a war crime. In all, over 14 million Sudanese have been displaced from their homes due to the armed conflict between the military and the rapid support forces. Amid this situation, the movement denounced the severe shortage of food and medical supplies in the country, which has triggered the death of the elderly and children. In Pakistan, several passengers were taken hostage by an armed group that attacked a train in the southwest of the country. The armed group, identified as the Balochistan Liberation Army, claimed to have detonated an explosive on the railway track before quickly taking control of the train. The passenger train was carrying several hundred people, and the insurgents claimed to have taken more than 100 hostages, including members of the security forces. Later, the country's authorities said at least 104 had been rescued. In this regard, some of the rescued passengers were given medical treatment at the makeshift relief center set up at the Kedah railway station. In this context, China condemned on Wednesday the hijacking of a Pakistani train in the Balochistan province, which is still in process.
We noted the relevant reports and strongly condemn this terrorist attack. China firmly opposes all forms of terrorism and will continue to firmly support Pakistan in advancing its counterterrorism efforts to maintain social unity and stability and protect the safety of the people. China is ready to further strengthen counterterrorism security cooperation with Pakistan to jointly safeguard regional peace, security, and stability.
The 23rd International Festival of Film Premieres, The Spirit of Fire, was held in Russia. At the event, the Colombian film Seed of the Desert, directed by Sebastián Parra, won second place in the category of Best Film Debut. The film, which narrates the difficult decision of a couple facing an unexpected pregnancy and the consequences it brings, was prized for its quality and was in contention for the Silver Tiger Award, which was finally granted to the film To Kill a Mongolian Horse by Xiao Chuan-jian. With the participation of films from 14 countries, selected from more than 500 productions, this festival has consolidated itself as one of the most important in Russia. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.